Going to quickly talk about it, get in, get out, show some graphics, show some clips. Then next thing you know, the last one we did was the two doctors. It was 2 hours and 18 minutes long. And the thing about that, though, is that I chapter the video, so you can kind of jump around where you want to. But at the same time, I kind of am just like, I just want to talk about it and kind of info dump everything I know and remember about that time of the story. And what that does, it gets people to remember their moments of that particular story. And we were talking last night after I did my, well, I think it was even before the radio show or during the radio show, that certain stories mean a lot to us. Some stories are just great stories we watch. Other stories, there's like something happening in our lives that we're always going to put to that particular story, or that's when you started watching the series. So there's a lot of great things that are always associated, and I love hearing your stories. I love hearing how you got into it, what this story meant for you. How did you buy this on VHS? And now these stories are, out on DVD. They're coming out on Blu-ray, and I love it. But I don't have the same enthusiasm as I did when they came out on VHS because there is just so much excitement. And for those of you in the room with me right now who had been in this back in the 80s, knows that having Doctor Who stories come out on VHS was never a given. And you could record them off the air, but there was never really a guarantee that we're going to get these. And so that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about this. And so I've never done a video on the war games, is what we're going to talk about today. It's kind of a case study on each story. And I will move through things. I will show clips. Hopefully you'll find it semi-entertaining. If you do, make sure you let me know. If you don't, I don't want to hear about it. You can keep that to yourself. But I've not done one on the war games before. I will probably multiple times today call it the war machines. And you'll just have to remember I'm older now and that I don't remember things as well as I used to. So just nod at the man on the stage and everything will be just fine. One of the weird things that's weird about me doing Doctor Who on BBC Video Live is simply this. Normally I have my collection of VHS tapes behind me as a backdrop, and it feels really weird not doing it. So the closest I came up with is this. You can stare at that, stare at it. So what this is I would normally sit in front of this, and if Scott was enterprising, he would have erected a scaffolding for me to have the podium right in front of the screen, so it would have been just like it would in the videos. So what you're looking at here is my PAL VHS collection, and I never collected, well, I did collect the US releases for a while, and then I decided I wanted to collect what we call the PAL VHS releases. They're from the UK. They're in a different television format than what we had over here, because I cannot collect anything the way anyone else does. I have to do it weird and different and more expensive, and that's what we have here. So this is kind of what we're going to be talking about here. And I'm going to explain some of the stuff that we normally talk about in these videos, and if they don't subscribe to the war games, all I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example, because I think even though this isn't like Josh Nair's video about Doctor Who that has tens of thousands of views, we get probably about 3,000 views per video on these. And for something as niche as this, I think it's pretty good. Just so you know, if you do want to check out some of the videos, go to YouTube, and my page is From the Archive 1. And I have a ton of content up there. So let's get started. One of the things that I like to do is I like to show clips and stuff from the 80s. And KTCA did not run a lot of promos for Doctor Who, especially the ones that were provided to them. At least I never saw them. And I like to put that provision out there because we all saw things at different times. I think a lot of people may not realize there was a promo for the 5 Doctors that aired on KTCA for a while that maybe no one had ever seen. So we all see different things. But Lionheart provided promos for each Doctor. And this was back in 1986 when there's only 6 doctors at that time. Who knew that we'd be up to 15? Is that what it is? Okay. Once they're not on VHS anymore, I don't care. I don't pay any attention. Here's a promo that aired on a lot of other markets that's provided by Lionheart.
The Doctor has so many faces, it's hard to tell who's who. This Doctor is a cosmic clown.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
A beetle-haired, flute-playing, space-time wanderer. He's magical and witty, always a step ahead of everyone else. But he's a Time Lord, and that means he could completely change his appearance at any moment.
We're the same Time Lord.
Who's next? Doctor Who. It makes you wonder.
Does it make you wonder? I'm just curious. If you just let me know, I'm curious. It never made me wonder. But talk about just the standard stereotypical lines about a doctor. But that's what it is. And when you get to the 6th Doctor, which I included that on my most latest video, the 2 Doctor video, at the end it's like, who will we turn into next? It shows Hartnell. So that doesn't happen. At least in the Twin Cities, that didn't happen. Let's talk a little bit. One of the things I like to talk about is like the history of the story, because the story obviously was broadcast on BBC One from April to June 1969. It was the last Patrick Troughton story, last black and white story. But one of the sad things we always have to talk about here is the fact that, and one of the things that I didn't quite realize as a young person watching Doctor Who, is what we were watching were what we call telerecordings. And the telerecordings were basically either on transmission or after the fact, that there's a camera that was pointed at a flat screen, and it filmed the screen and the episodes onto 16mm film. I didn't know about that. So what were they on originally? They were on 2-inch videotape, which is what's on screen right now. And the 2-inch videotapes, there are no 2-inch videotapes existing for Doctor Who between 1963 and basically 1970. And the first actual master tape for Doctor Who is The Ambassadors of Death, Episode 1. And so what about the 2-inch transmission tapes for the War Games? Well, the junking authorization for these tapes for all 10 episodes of the War Games came on May 20th, 1971. But it was in good company as far as stuff being wiped, because it also on that day, the pilot, An Earthly Child, all 6 episodes of Fury from the Deep, all 8 episodes of The Invasion, they were all slated at that point to be wiped. So, my goodness, right? And who knew? But like I said, 16mm recordings were made, and they all existed. Some need to be found. Some had some issues to them that the BBC didn't realize that's going to impact the broadcast of these a little bit later. We'll get into that. But the War Games themselves, they came over to, first was shown in US. I don't know, I've heard people say 84. Everything I look at though actually looks more like 86, but I could be wrong on that. That's, sometimes it's really hard to get like a lot of accuracies even from like 40 years ago. A great source for good information is Broadcast Who. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that site. It's a great site to look at to see not only what has aired around the world, but what has aired in the Twin Cities. They had some mistakes, and there's one I don't agree with that I'm going to be talking about here in a minute as well. But so it's really interesting about Doctor Who in the 1980s that it was shown over here in movie version in the Twin Cities market. They obviously allowed it to be either episodic or movie version. And basically, if it was a 6-part story, all the other markets, I think all the other markets that showed movie version, would air all 6 episodes in one clump. Channel 2 would take that 6-parter and they would chop it in half, so it could be shown over 2 weeks. And so what you end up with is, first of all, really horrible edits when you're going into the second part. And here's a little nostalgia trip for you to kind of see what those edits were kind of like.
Doctor Who is brought to you locally by the Unpainted Plays, designers, builders, and retailers of natural wood furniture.
The one they call the doctor may not be sincere, but his friend is dying.
In mid-conversation.
Then you let the doctor into his spaceship.
Now, I thought that's how the BBC provided it to them, because I have no idea how anything worked. I'm like 10 years old, relax. And so I'm just like, well, they put all this effort into making these great programs, and why can't they ever get the opening title sequence to work? So why I bring this up and why I think it's important is because the War Games was different when it came to movie version. What it was is that it actually was 2 parts. And what made it unique is at the end of the first part, there actually was basically a next time promo for it, which is really interesting. It's like a to be continued, and this is what it looks like.
Activate the dimensional control.
We're doing all right, Doctor. Very nice, Gemini. Don't worry. Nothing can happen to us in here.
We're seeing things. Walls. Look!
And the ceiling, too!
Oh, no! Oh, oh where did it go? You must surrender, Doctor, or you will all be crushed to death. You have 30 seconds to decide. 30 seconds! Stop! Take him!
Don't shoot, you might hit the Doctor!
Doctor. Zoe.
Oh, Doctor.
Jamie. Are you all right? Yes, everything's under control. Now listen, everyone, just follow me. We're going to take over the war room. Stand still! Don't move! You are completely surrounded.
Doctor!
Thank you, Doctor. A nice, neat little package for us to dispose of.
Is it?
Time Lords! Try harder! We must get away! We must get away!
So that clip didn't outstay its welcome at all. And when you're putting this stuff together, you're like, I think this is going to be just fine. And after every scene, I thought it was going to be the end, and another scene would show up. And it's riveting stuff, I'm sure. It makes you probably all want to go and watch episodes 6 through 10 of the War Games when we're done here, so I don't blame you. But you know what, though? This is super important to the broadcast history of Doctor Who in America, and one of the things that I find as a bias is that the UK folks that have put out the Blu-rays and the DVD, maybe not so much the Blu-rays anymore, because we've had a couple things that are of interest that were done on PBS, but some of this stuff is like very important to the history of Doctor Who broadcasting in the US. Anyone ever get the book Red, White, and Who? You know, that's another example of capturing that time period. And one of the things I get kind of sick and tired of is like the Australian continuities on the DVD and Blu-ray sets. I can't tell you how many times I get sick and tired of hearing about Doctor Who and the Green Man, which is one of the, I think, New Zealand or Australian continuities, which was hilarious, you know, 35 years ago. Now it's like whatever. And one of the things that's really missing, I think, is the Howard Da Silva intros. Anyone know what I'm talking about with the Howard Da Silva intros, right? So when the Tom Baker episodes were first being syndicated over in the US by Time Life, not by Lionheart, that for the first 98 episodes of the Tom Baker collection of episodes, they had Howard Da Silva do narration, because apparently we're not smart enough to understand what's going on in Doctor Who. So we had to have somebody tell us about it. Unfortunately, he said a lot of things wrong, but it's still a wonderful part of the Doctor Who heritage. And if you haven't seen it, why don't we take a look at a clip right now?
Cybermen. That's what we're up against, Commander. Cybermen.
But surely, Doctor, Cybermen died out centuries ago.
They disappeared after their attack on Vogel at the end of a cyber war. Not the same thing as dying out, Commander. They're utterly ruthless, total machine creatures.
Inside a lighthouse in space, a mysterious plague is killing off the crew members one by one. But the doctor diagnoses it as a case of poisoning instead, and there appears to be no antidote. Is this the work of the Cybermen?
Gold buys humans. And we have more gold here on Volga than in the rest of the known galaxy.
But he has not communicated.
Better he should not at this time. The Cybermen may be monitoring our radio frequencies.
The mention of Cybermen fills me with dread.
The cyber scheme unfolds as a plot to take over the galaxy. But the Metalmen can succeed only if they regain control of their native planet in order to blow it up. Its core is of pure gold, alluring to humankind, but fatal to Cybermen.
Then we're still heading for the biggest bang in history!
Oh, yes. Oh, no. They've locked the gyro controls. The flight trimmers are jammed.
What does that mean?
It means we're heading for the biggest bang in history.
Our trio of space travelers takes an unusual means of transport back to space beacon Nerva. Though the ride is slightly disorienting, the Time Lord's ring does the trick, spinning them to their destination.
Now, each episode of those 98 had that kind of an opening, would maybe have something like just a line during like the episode, like Underworld has one that's really funny, that's just out of nowhere. Howard Da Silva's voice comes in during the action. It's like, okay. And then the ending of each episode would have Howard talking about next time on Doctor Who. I love it. I wouldn't want to watch Doctor Who this way, but I love it. And I think it's worth making sure that these are available to people. Now you saw it went to black during the clip. That's because these were for commercial stations. Where now, of course, back, especially in its heyday, 80s and 90s, they're all for PBS. So really, it's just such a wonderful piece of Doctor Who history that I just feel like needs to be represented. It was T.J. Lubinsky, who is kind of the champion of these. He was getting them on the U.S. releases, the DVDs back in the day, and somebody at the BBC put a stop to it because they wanted it to be more of a British experience, which is unfortunate. Are you knitting a scarf? All right.
Are you doing a presentation?
No! I mean, you can clearly see that. Yeah, well, no, I love it. If I knew, I would be up here doing it as well. Oh, you do have someone behind you knitting a scarf as well. Oh, well done. I bet it's better than his. I could already see it is. Also, it's really interesting. I wanted to see stuff like The Invasion, and it's not unheard of, like with Planet of the Daleks, Invasion of the Dinosaurs. They omitted an episode because they were able to kind of keep the plot going with what existed and put it into syndication. So Scene Magazine, anyone remember the term Scene Magazine? KTCA's membership magazine, they had somebody from the program had alluded to the fact that they're going to be running Patrick Troughton stories, and that it's a package of 6 episodes, 6 stories. They probably said episodes. Story, of course, is the proper way to talk about Doctor Who. And I just assumed that meant that they're actually putting in The Invasion this time, because that's clearly what that's going to be. Did I not realize that they counted the War Games as 2 episodes? And that was a real bummer for me, for my 13-year-old self. I was really upset about it. And I must still be if I'm talking about it 40-some years later. Now, I can tell that there's some very savvy PBS folks in here who've watched it at the time of broadcast. And I have a memory that seems to be different than what Broadcast Who has, and what even KTCA might have had. There was a point that Doctor Who was running 3 times in a weekend: Friday night on KTCA, Saturday morning on KTCI, Saturday night on KTCA. And there was a point that Mind of Evil was running in the evening, and they were finishing up Troughton on the morning. And Mind of Evil, instead of running the first part, because they break it up, remember that? They break it up, so there's 2 movie version parts to the Mind of Evil, that they actually ran the War Games, one of the parts of the War Games, instead of the Mind of Evil, and then the following week they reran the entirety of the Mind of Evil. That's how I remember it. They remember it, they talk about it in a different way. They talk about it that they ran the second part of the Mind of Evil that week, and then the following week they ran both parts. And there might be some people in here like, who gives a crap either way? Well, I do, first of all. But secondly, there is PBS or KTCA made a special little announcement about it the following week, and it looks a little something like this.
You're watching KTCA TV, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Channel 2. Due to a TARDIS malfunction, Part 2 of The Mind of Evil was aired last Friday. Tonight, barring an attack by the Daleks, we will air Parts 1 and 2 of The Mind of Evil. Doctor Who is brought to you locally by the Unpainted Place Incorporated, designers, builders, and retailers of natural wood furniture, and Worlds Within Limited, headquarters for Doctor Who and other science fiction fantasy merchandise.
All right, enough of that. Now, I mean, you might be like, some of these clips might be too long, but I like to include that nostalgia. Maybe some of you haven't seen that in years, and it's just nice to kind of see it again a little bit. And I still stand by what I remember seeing happen at the time, but does anyone remember it differently? Does that make more sense, what you saw from that KTCA thing? Can anyone hear me? Is some of you still even alive?
Some of us, I remember that might not have been the only occurrence.
I think that's...
That they would
Yeah.
They're not KTCI versus KTCA because they were both in the same studio.
Absolutely. And there's also, and this doesn't apply to this, but there is always a possibility too back in the day that because production codes were out of order for broadcast order, that sometimes, like especially season 12, some of the stories would be mixed up. Instead of going to Ark in Space, it goes to Sontaran Experiment and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Now, speaking of PBS, as we are, is that I figured it's only right to show off Peter Davison talking about KTCA.
Hello, I'm Peter Davison. Like many Channel 2 viewers, I too am a loyal Doctor Who fan. I was 12 when the series was first shown in 1963. I became an avid viewer and was elated to be cast as the fifth Doctor of the longest-running science fiction program in television history. There are endless possibilities for continuing episodes, and who knows, the series could go on indefinitely, but only with loyal support. Here's one Who backing Channel 2. Have we heard from you?
Well,
Where was that recorded?
that's at the prom.
Oh, that is at the prom. Okay.
I believe so. I don't. Here's the thing. I never went.
I was. That's why I.
Does it look familiar?
No.
Okay, maybe. Because the famous story of me going to the convention at the prom was, of course, I was. That's '86, so I would have been 12. So I couldn't quite drive yet. And my dad said, okay, I'll take you out to this Doctor Who convention. And the prom is in St. Paul in the Midway area, well, was. And we're driving down University, and there is a line for, the prom is a big place, and it's wrapped around the building. My dad just turned the truck around, didn't say a word to me, drove back, got into 94, and we just went home. And I don't blame him. No, it was University. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. You couldn't recognize the inside of where Peter was doing his thing. So this is the portion where I go after all of you. Yeah. Could be. Like I said, I've never been inside. I wasn't allowed. So.
I was there and I don't recognize it, so that's why I was kind of asking.
Anybody recognize the inside there? No. The Fern House, and the great voice of Oz spoke in, "Who are you?" All right, and only because this is a story about Patrick Trown. Here's Patrick Trown.
Hello, you guys. I'm Peter Baker, Colin Pertwee. No, I'm not. I'm Patrick Trown, aren't I? Would you like to see comedy, drama, adventure, and science fiction all in one show? You can with Doctor Who. I should know, since I played the first regeneration of Doctor Who for 3 years. Something else I know. KTCA Channel 2 wants to continue bringing you Doctor Who, the longest-running science fiction program in television history. So we need your support. Call now with your pledge and climb aboard the TARDIS for a magical adventure you won't forget.
Isn't that great? I mean, that's just something, they didn't get John Pertwee in '88 to do that. But John Pertwee, does anyone remember John Pertwee was actually on the WCCO Channel 4 newscast, the 5 or 5:30 that Friday night? And they show a clip from Time Fest, and I'm in it. And I've been, 70 years later, I want to reach out, see if they still have it. Probably not. Probably on a stone tape or something. But it was great memories. Just he's at the news desk. Unbelievable. Anyone tape it? No, y'all failed me.
I was at the convention.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, there my dad did bring me and take me back. So he did something right finally. No, I'm just kidding. He's going to strike me down. I do believe in ghosts, So KTCA isn't the only one that does these wonderful bits for public television. There is a station in Pittsburgh, WQEX, and my scarf knitting friend over here, Mike, introduced me to him because back in the day we would do tape trading, and people like myself and Mike, we wanted these in episodic format, not movie versions. So Mike had friends who taped them off of WQEX, and I got copies from him. And lo and behold, before every single episode, there would be a VJ telling us what we're about to watch in the same high-quality, detail-oriented way that Howard Da Silva would do it. Susan would be Sudan, and wonderful stuff like that. These are truly wonderful pieces of television if you have a sense of humor. And sometimes, because it's Pittsburgh, one of the people that would be introducing these would be Handyman Negri from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, I'm not showing any clips of those, but I buy VHS. By the way, if anyone has off-air VHS tapes of Doctor Who from the 80s and you want to get rid of them or allow them to be digitized, I'd love to take them, because I grab everything and I find the interesting bits. And I bought some tapes off of eBay, just off-air Doctor Who, and then I realized that this person is in Pittsburgh, and I'm like, no, it couldn't be. And I get the tapes, and sure enough, they are, and it's not all of them, but it's a lot of them, of these VJs. And let me show you the quality, and some of these I just grabbed from other videos. Some of them just show the quality of what we're talking about here.
Hey, Whovians, what's shaking down your alleyway this Wednesday night? I'm Tom Downing, and if you're concerned, well, I'm feeling great. And if you're not concerned, well, I'm still feeling great. How come? Because for the first time in a long while, we're starting off a new adventure tonight on my Electric Playground night. Now, the boss said that I screwed around too much the last time I got to kick off a new series, so tonight I'm going to be pretty straightforward. Our adventure is called The Invasion of the Cursed Carnival Mutants from the barren planet of the Skinny Squirrels. Now, I know this isn't what's listed in your paper or in your TV guide, but that's because this is a recently uncovered adventure, and we wanted to get it on as soon as possible. Now, this series features an actor known now as the Forgotten Doctor. That actor? Pat Sajak. As Doctor Who, Pat portrays a confused doctor with an obsession for Amana radar ranges and items on gift certificates available from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago 60609. Now, Alice, the maid from the Brady Bunch, is the Doctor's faithful companion, Stu Beef, in this series, while Orville Redenbacher and a very young Whoopi Goldberg are the mutants. The story begins as Doctor Who and Stu Beef accidentally mistake the carnival mutants for Tupperware representatives. Well, as many of you know, I'm sure, this act is considered a declaration of war throughout the galaxy. So the mutants don full battle gear and prepare to play a best out of 3 putt-putt golf game. Now, I'm not going to tell you what happens on the windmill hole, but I will tell you it's an incredible scene. Here it is then, episode 1 of the Cursed Carnival Mutants from the barren planet of the Skinny Squirrels.
Yeah. Yeah, what was he on, huh? My God, that's something. You all had to see that, okay? I'm not apologizing for anything here. You all had to see that. Here's another one, more closer to what we're talking about here. It's about Patrick Troughton. Well, it was for the 2 doctors. And for those who don't know, and I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, instead of the 45-minute episodes that season 22 is in, they syndicated it into 25-minute episodes in the US, as well as movie version. WQEX had the 25-minute episodes, so this is the continuity or the VJ for what we would say part 6. But I'll just let somebody a lot more handsome and intelligent talk about it.
Now there's also another one here, which I'll have to take a look to see which one, if I don't know if it's from the 2 doctors or not, but it's talking about, the VJ is talking about whether or not we all think that Pip Theodore looks like Patrick Troughton, which is really kind of fun because that was always what I first thought, the very first time I saw him. So check this out.
Hey Whovians, Tom Downing back with a startling discovery. I think I have positive evidence that one of our own QEX VJs was once a Time Lord. Now I know it's hard to believe, but it's my theory that Pip Theodore, Monday night's Foreign Encounters host, was at one time Patrick Troughton. Now how can I prove this? Well, first, have you ever seen Pip and Patrick together? Okay, next, Pip Theodore has a British accent, right? Okay, listen.
Hello, me darlings. This is Pip Theodore.
Pretty convincing, huh? Now, here's Patrick Troughton.
Officially, I'm here quite unofficially.
Sounds pretty much the same, doesn't it? Okay, need more proof? Okay, here it is. The keystone, the missing link, and the final clue of the Downing theory of Theodorian regeneration. Okay, here's Pip Theodore, and here's Patrick Troughton. Now, side by side, I rest my case. Here's the final episode of The Two Doctors, starring Colin Baker and Pip Theodore.
Yeah, what do you think of that? All right, so also one of the things that I do in this video series is I like to find some of these people from this period of time, the 80s, who had an impact on PBS, the PBS showings and whatnot, and interview them. Anyone remember Eric Luskin? And he just, I mean, his documentary, has season 25 come out over here yet? Oh, well, it's on there. The Making of Doctor Who, Silver Nemesis. And when I did my Silver Nemesis video, I interviewed him and just wanted to play a little bit of, I didn't put this in the interview, but a little bit of Eric Luskin. I have here with me Eric Luskin, and many of us Doctor Who fans, especially PBS in the 80s, would recognize you for your work doing the Doctor Who documentaries for New Jersey Network. And we're going to talk a little bit about all of that today. Well, here's something that you might find interesting or not. I'm not sure. But as you probably know, back doing your various documentaries, that people like to dress up in costumes of their favorite characters and whatnot. And that goes along with it, especially in the 80s. They used to do fan videos, right? I don't know, so the group I was in, we did a fan video in 1989, we did a fan video about missing episodes. And we trying to figure out how do we string this mockumentary together. So back in 1989, we figured out a good character that we could use that could make this mockumentary work. And this is what we came up with. Take a look at this.
I'm Eric Luskin. I'm sorry, was that important? Probably not. Keep on going. I'm Eric Luskin. We are here on the set of Revelation of the Daleks. Now we are going to get a rare behind-the-scenes look at Doctor Who.
I don't know if there's ever been anybody who has done a fan costume of you.
Well, and I have to say, the hair was terrific. The trousers were, very, very authentic, and even the horrible tie with the blazers. Yeah, that was first class. I really appreciate that. That's terrifying, actually.
We laughed so hard. Yeah, that was fun. Getting back to the war games, and I know that we're running out of time, but Scott said I can go for another 4 hours, so that's super helpful. But I'll need about 5. And we didn't really talk about the fact for war games that back in December that it was shown on BBC4 in color. And did everyone know that it was on color? Yeah. And there's going to be a point that's going to be released in the UK, presumably just like the Daleks was last year. It's going to be released over here as well. But one of the things that I talk about is stuff that has been found for a particular story that might have been missing. And one of them is the fact that 6 of the 10 episodes of the War Games, when we were watching at PBS and the first 2 video releases in the UK, had a kind of a mold fungus on the episodes. And back when you started getting to the DVD era, where everything needed to be restored and stuff, the restoration team were like, well, we don't really know how we're going to tackle this. And there was actually somebody who lived in Twin Cities on the restoration team forum named Chris Frame, and he suggested, well, have you ever looked, because we know that the BFI had copies of the episodes. Little do we realize that they're actually negatives, not copies, so they are the best you can get. was they looked and they didn't have the fungus. Therefore, it wasn't on the DVD, which was great. But still, if you look at some of the location footage shot, it's not very. It's kind of almost like a slight double exposure. It's just not very good. And that's just kind of how that stuff went. But what had happened was the original film editor, Chris Hayden, found just a little bit of location footage just in time to be put into the war games, the color war games. Now I don't have I didn't have time to put the footage together, but I'll show you. Peter Crocker had posted this on X, and this is the version that we're all used to of how it looks. And if you could take a look, this is the new transfer. You see the difference? I'll go back. So this is old, and that's new, and then they colorize that and they put that into and it's from episode 1. It's not a lot, but it's pretty cool. And I still find it fascinating that we're finding stuff still, that stuff is still being discovered. And it's like it was with the film editor the entire time. It's pretty incredible. One of the things I like to do, and I'll probably breeze through this a little bit, is I like to also show off what DWM and DWB were talking about these releases at the time, because I think it's of historical value as well. And so, from just really fast, like DWM, issue 157, this is where we first start hearing about releases coming out on VHS, and at that time, An Unearthly Child and the War Games were coming out on February 5th. This issue is from February, and they had no idea when it was coming out. So it was like very early on. Look at now, the most recent DWM has a pretty substantial look at the new Season 7 Blu-ray set coming out. Back then, they hardly talked about this stuff at all, especially if you go back to the 80s. But then they finally start talking about it, and they have to talk about it in the past sense for issue 158, where they're just like, well, it went on sale in February, so, news, right? And then my favorite thing is always like the weird kind of headlines. I just signed this kind of Dr. Double Dies, talking about Edmund Warwick, who was retained because his similarity to Hartnell. I don't know who needs glasses more. I'm sure he's a nice man, but he really didn't. If he looked so much like Hartnell, why wasn't he in the Five Doctors, huh? Have you ever thought of that? I could tell you haven't. So going on, one of the great things is once they start, they had Doctor Who being released on VHS in the UK starting in 84, and it didn't get a lot of coverage. But once you started hitting stuff like this wave with An Unearthly Child, War Games, Mind Robber, there was a very much a different take on the VHS. It was kind of a soft rebrand, and these publications are taking more notice, especially now that these are coming out pretty much unedited for the most part, with very minor edits. And so this is from issue 159. John Freeman does this really, it's a great piece of historical, just to look at what DWM was saying back in the day about all these videos coming out. And you can see a pencil sketch from Alistair Pearson's Mind Robber release over in the corner there. And I'm going to say, I think those, especially those black and white Alistair Pearson covers, Unearthly Child, War Games, Crotons, Mind Robber, I think there's some of the best paintings of Doctor Who ever, in my opinion. DWB, you all remember DWB, number 73? Well, they got the scoop on DWM. They were ahead of the game talking about the video releases coming out. And this was back, I think this was in January. And then another very small blurb about it. And then they also, let's see here, also had a sort of article about BBC Video. I have a Patreon. I always keep all these articles up on my Patreon for those who join at a certain level if you ever want access to the stuff I put in my videos. But this is just such a fascinating look, and something like Quatermass in the Pit that you see on the first page, getting any kind of release at all was just incredible. I think one of the things, I'm going to hold off on that thought there for a second because it applies more to us, I think, too. There is also, DWB did a War Games review after it came out, and of course, they slammed it, because that's kind of what DWB did back in the day. Now, what maybe some of you don't realize, because we know we got the VHS in the US back in, I think, 91. In the UK, there was a whole other VHS set called the Time Lord Collection. And there they had a restored version of the War Games that they put with the Three Doctors and Deadly Assassin. And this is from issue 332 in 2002, where there wasn't a lot of news about it coming out, but W.H. Smith, because it was a W.H. Smith exclusive, they finally put an ad out for it, but DWM didn't talk about it at all. But what they did do is they were giving away box sets, and I have this box set, and I've really never played it because I didn't want to. You could win if you answered a very simple question. Who does Chancellor Goth try to drown in the Deadly Assassin? Is it Doctor Who? Is it Mary Whitehouse? Or is it himself? Yeah, Goth is trying to drown himself, yeah. So, but then in the US, for the War Games, at least the first release, there is a wave of them. Are you okay over there? There was a wave of releases in 1991. This was for us. I mean, in the UK, they're releasing 2 stories a month, but here they do 6 stories in a wave. And War Games was part of that in the first one. And what an exciting time. And I mean, it's exciting for us, but we would see it on PBS all the time. But what was more interesting for the UK viewers was that there wasn't even like UK Gold yet, and some of the other stations like BSB was just kind of getting going that were showing some of the reruns. So getting stuff like this was unheard of. They didn't get repeats. They very rarely got repeats, and they're often in season. So this was very exciting. And once again, the War Games in the UK, instead of being one pack, they were released, even though they were sold together, they were released as 2 parts, 2 cases kind of together. Whereas the US, as you can see, is a cardboard case, a cheap, flimsy cardboard case that somehow managed to last 30 years. But it says part 1, part 2. But then for some inexplicable reason, at the top of the War Games box, it says part 1. And it makes me wonder, my God, is there another 2 VHS set with 10 more episodes of the War Games we don't know about? I mean, I love the War Games, don't get me wrong, but come on. It's the cover for the Time Lord collection. It's just, Black Sheep. Black Sheep is the people who laid this out. They took over in 1997. One of the first releases was the War Machines. See, I got it right. War Machines release. And these are very uninspired. But here's a family photo shot if you wanted to see them all together. I do have all of them, and I do hug them, if you are wondering. So, and you think I'm kidding. So, and then the only thing we could talk about is the color War Games, which is great. Funny enough, I have not watched it yet. And normally I'm up to date in this stuff. I just haven't got around to it. But it's cut down to, what's it cut down to, 75 minutes? 90? Is it 90? Okay. And it cuts out a lot of stuff, but I mean, it's a new interpretation of the story, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, one of the things I also like to do on these things is I like to end the videos with a comparison of all the releases, so you could see the quality. And I don't know how well you're going to see it on here. I had technical difficulties getting the War Games sort of set up, so I want to play one that is from my first release, The Tomb of the Cybermen, because I think that there's some profound differences. You're going to hear me babble on for a bit, and that's just how it goes. But then you're going to see the VHS, the 2 DVD releases, and then I was going to say Blu-ray, but we don't have a Blu-ray yet. But you can see, I especially look at the VHS, it's pretty interesting. But once again, let's get Mr. Handsome on to talk about this.
Before I go, on my videos that I look at for DVD, Blu-rays, I always like to do comparisons because I like to see where we've come from. And so what I'm doing now is I'm just going to show a comparison here because there's a couple things. First of all, we have the VHS that we're going to show. Then we also have the original DVD release of Tomb of the Cybermen that was not vid-fired. In fact, there was an Easter egg on here that showed vid-fired, what vid-fired would look like. It wasn't really meant for us, per se. It was more meant for the restoration team to kind of see what this would look like vid-fired on DVD. And then from the revisitation set, we have the vid-fired, fully restored DVD. We want to show a little bit of all of that. Now, the only thing, to my knowledge, that is different, I mean, apart from the restoration of these two DVDs, is simply that this one had Tomb Watch on it, TOMBWATCH, which was a panel that had a lot of the cast of Tomb of the Cybermen on it, and they couldn't get the rights to put it onto this new release. So if you have this, hold on to this. If it's going to be on the season 5 collection set, I don't know, but it certainly is nice to have all the same. And so it's really interesting to kind of keep up. And you're probably wondering, how much stuff do I have that I can tell you all the different versions and show them to you? And partly why I want to do this, because you never know when I have to downsize, so I kind of want to make some kind of visual record of it. You're lucky I didn't bring out the novelization to show you also, or the different audio soundtracks too. That's for another day, right? Here's those comparisons.
How did you know that we would come to release you?
So I just wanted to thank you very much.
Enough of him. All right, so I invite you all to check out some of the other videos I have. Once again, they are chapters, so you can skip around or not have to watch it all, because as you can tell, I talk a lot about this stuff. I am back here tomorrow. I don't know what time, but I'm going to be showing some clips of British television that has been recovered since the last time I did one of these with you all. And I'm not saying I have Missing Doctor Who, but I have Doctor Who that you will have not seen, that is not on the Blu-ray sets. You will have heard of it though. So just something a little bit interesting to take a look at. Trust me, it's not a big deal, but it's something interesting to look at, plus a lot of other British television stuff. I thank you all so very much. It shows that you're all geeks too, and that I really appreciate you all sitting through all this. It's a lot of fun. I'm around if you want to yes?
Sorry, have you talked about the Chicago Max Headroom hack?
Well, once I get to Horror Fang Rock, I would talk about it for sure. Absolutely, yeah. Because I try to keep everything within its story, that so it all kind of tries to be organized as best it can. Probably doesn't come across in this presentation, but once again, over on YouTube at From the Archive 1, we have a lot of videos up, and I just want to thank you all so very much for not passing away during this presentation, and it's really quite a lot. So thank you all, and hope to see you throughout the weekend. Appreciate it.